So this was built in 1838 over by Lockridge, and that was before Fairfield actually was a town, because they had groups of people. You know, this was unsettled territory, and so they had had kind of like search parties almost that would come from over around Mount Pleasant, that they would come this way. And so, and at that time they were thinking about naming Fairfield Paynesville. And yeah, that doesn't sound very good, does it? And so, but it was actually in the Bonnifield cabin that Mrs. Bonnifield said, looking over the prairie and how lush it was with the animals and all the vegetation, why don't we name it Fairfield? And they said, you know, that's a good idea. So that's how they decided on the name Fairfield, was just from that meeting. And at the time, where the cabin was, that's where people would come to stay overnight. You know, people that were running for elected office and territorial governors, that kind of thing. They would stay in this cabin. And so if we'll go in there and you'll see how spacious it is, or they thought it was back then.
And how fancy it is.
Yes, so.
So watch your step there as you're going in.
And so just keep your hands kind of in front of you guys.
Oh.
So is this actual furniture from the cabin? Do we know? Or is it just, it would have been about the right?
Yeah, I think they've just made something for the time period.
Yeah.
As far as we know.
They'll tell us in a second. We'll go listen.
So, and when they had brought it to this 10-acre place and reassembled it, as you can see, at the time, this 16-foot by 24-foot cabin was considered very spacious. And so, I'm not sure if the people back then were about your size and weren't big, like, or big around at least, like me, but they would sit around the fire and discuss things. And but at that time, you know, they wanted to have this as kind of a memorial to when the Fairfield was founded, and the fact that they wanted people, they wanted the freedom, and they wanted equality for everyone, and they wanted to be, you know, a good host, or and then the fair play, or being honest and kind to people, which are still, you know, things that we should do today, is how I feel about it. So, so if you look at the walls, they actually had taken logs that were, you know, trees, and they would cut the branches off, and instead of keeping them round, they shaped them into square bundles, and so, or logs. So I brought these from the Mazda barns because we have these in one of our display cases. But these are actually broad axes that they would take the log. It would have to be a certain size. I would imagine, is this about 8 inches, Craig, or 10? So they would take a 10-inch tree, or 12, that would be this big around, and they would have to cut the round parts off to make it square. So these were made, I'm left-handed, so I hold this pretty awkwardly, but so they would measure at the end, and then they would cut down just little places, and then they would use the axe to swing level so that they could make it flat so that it would seal together. So then they would put chinking just so that the air and the bugs and stuff couldn't come through it. So, and the interesting thing that I learned was that with one of the visitors, that this broad axe actually came from around Massachusetts, because you kind of see how it looks like a pilgrim. And and then this one, I come to find out, came from Louisiana, just by the different shape and how the blacksmiths decided to make the axes there. I'm not sure if it had much to do with the type of trees that they were trying to shape into logs, but this one is quite a bit heavier. So you want to see how heavy that is? So yeah, go ahead and pass it around.
Careful.
Yeah, but don't drop it or swing it.
On your
Could you imagine swinging that all day?
Do you want to look, baby? What? Good job.
Okay.
You might get just a little tired
And
using that.
I
was already tired.
Were you? Oh.
Oh.
Well, you'll sleep good this afternoon at your nap. And the one thing that I thought, that since I was left-handed, that I couldn't use this axe, it's like, oh shoot, I'd have to just watch people make logs. But it was explained to me that if you take the handle out this side and put it over here, then a left-handed person could use it.
You couldn't
So.
get out of work.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
So that's
That's that part. Okay. Well, you'll see that these are a couple of the people that were first here in the cabin. You kind of see how they're dressed and the beards and so on. This here, they've made this so that they could swing the tea kettle in over the fire and heat it up, and then bring it back out and take the tea kettle off, and they'd have hot water. Not quite what you have today.
Yeah.
And then they used to, you notice how the rocking chairs are made. This one here is especially made out of, you can see they're made out of wood, so it's probably, they went to their timber and again cut down some trees and shaped them, and then they weaved them so that they could have them in their homes. They also made braided rugs and just used different material that they had available for that. They probably would have like maybe some type of a corner cupboard that they would keep their dishes in and so on. That's not quite in the corner because there is a register back behind there that they've put in, but there's really no heat in this building. The fireplace is your heat. This particular cabin also has a second floor, and there is a stairs. We're not actually going to go up there, but they would have had it to use. Many of the cabins just had the one floor, and they had their bedrooms and their beds and their kitchen, and that was their house.
Have you read Little House on the Prairie yet? See, this cabin was actually built 50 years before Laura Ingalls and Pa and them lived on the prairie. So it was just back, even in Little House on the Prairie, they would sometimes deal with the Indians that would come up or that would help them. And so this was just unexplored territory, and there were so many trees around, they just thought, well, why don't we just use these trees to actually make a cabin? And this is the oldest two-story cabin in Iowa. So we really have you know, something important here historically, you know, for the state.
Right. Well, and this sign up here that they put up also just gives some information about it. And I think Leon said a little bit, but Rhodham Bonnifield, and that's what this cabin is called, the Bonnifield cabin, built this log cabin 1838 in Round Prairie Township here in Jefferson County. And his wife, Nancy Minor Bonfield, had the honor of naming the town of Fairfield. When the commissioners met in this cabin, then in 1908, the cabin was moved to this site. This cabin then served as a home, a social center, a church, and a school. So then it's the oldest house in Iowa. So people would, you know, gather here for church services, and probably all the neighborhood kids, whatever, however close they were, could also have a school here too. So it was used for many different things.
Crazy how old it is, but also think about in 1908 they figured out how to move it. Like that's pretty amazing too.
Right.
That's awesome.
Right. They actually tore it down.
Okay, and then reassembled it.
Right,
here.
and then moved all the logs and then
Wow.
put it back together.
Hmm.
And then with
They
the
would have had to
chinking
use
and
horse and
horses
wagons, you
right,
know.
to transport the logs.
It was approximately 8 miles from here, is what I read, is where it was originally built.
Yeah.
And what they wanted to have it here at the Old Settlers Park? Is that
Right.
why they wanted to move it?
Yeah, just kind of a memorial or
Yeah.
pay homage,
Yeah.
tribute to the people, because they really appreciated, you know, their spirit and their message and desire of what to make the town of Fairfield back then.
Right, yeah. And so this particular area is belongs to the county. There's 10 acres here. And so the Old Settlers Association bought the 10 acres and then moved the cabin then to this spot and wanted it preserved.
When did they add the baseboard heat?
That
I'm not sure.
And why? No.
I think at one time maybe they really wanted to use the cabin as a museum,
Sure.
and then it just never took hold and stuff. At one point, back when Parsons College was here, I think it was not even locked.
Oh.
It was just
Wow.
open. But a lot of people didn't know the cabin was here either because it sits back away from the road. So, yeah, I've been on the commission since 2009, and so it's still, there's a lot of information that I don't even know that earlier people that were on the commission probably
Yeah,
did, and
sure.
it hasn't been written down.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but I think these, you know, like these, this is a door also, and a door there, and a story was told that they had, if they were bringing in firewood for the fireplace, or maybe possibly food or something, they'd come in one door and go out the other door. I don't know if that's a true story or not, but that's what some people have said about that. So, okay.
Cool. Do you guys have any questions? What would be the hardest part of living in a house like this? Vivi?
Making food.
Oh, yeah, that would be hard. Anybody else? I know what my answer would be. Addison?
Cutting down the logs.
Yeah, building it.
I know what mine would be,
Yeah.
taking a bath.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. Where's the bathroom? Where's the running water? That would be hard.
My family, there's 7 of us. I couldn't imagine 9 people living in this cabin, because a few years ago when my siblings would get together, very often we decided why we didn't get together very often.
Wasn't room for everybody, right?
Well, some of that, yes. But so could you imagine living here with 5 or 6 other people in your family in this one room? Where would the privacy be, or how could you read and that kind of thing?
Did you have a question? Did you have a question? Oh, okay.
I think they spent a lot of time outside.
Yeah.
I mean, because you had to carry water, you had to go get the firewood.
He's not using the mic.
You know, you had to.
What about cold days?
Cold days.
Yeah, but you won't stay outside.
Well, you would just dress warm.
Yeah, so what would some of the jobs for kids this age be? Carrying firewood, bringing water in. What else? Do you guys have any ideas?
Help making food, setting the table, like that stuff.
Yeah.
Taking care of the animals.
Oh, say it again.
Taking care of the animals.
Like making beds.
Yeah. Cleaning up. That's good. You guys think of any other ones?
Maybe making rugs with scraps of material.
Yep. We're going to go to the Madsen barn soon, and Teresa's going to teach us how to do Dutch oven cooking. So cooking. And we're going to make candles later. We're going to make corn husk dolls. So those would all be things that they might be doing too. Yeah.
Probably every family had a cow, so in the summer you'd have to mow the hay with just a hand sigh and get a bunch of hay. So in the winter the cows would have something to eat, and then you'd have to milk the cow every day.
Well, then you get milk.
Yeah. It'd be worth it, right?
And what else would they do with the milk? Make butter.
Yeah.
They could make stuff out of it, or they could also drink them out.
Hmm
Right.
They could make cottage cheese.
How do you keep your food cold?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yes. How would they? Well, they might have what they called an ice box and have blocks of ice in the ice box, or they might have to keep it outside, especially in the wintertime.
Or like a root cellar where the
Right.
ground temperature would be 50 degrees to keep their vegetables that they had raised during the summer.
Cool.
You know, they generally would build a house near a stream because you'd always have to have water or be able to dig a well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
depending on how far down the water was, as far as just digging one that was, say, 10 feet deep, but it might be 12 feet across, like more of a cistern to catch like rainwater that you would drink. So,
And then you could hang your meat and cheese and stuff down in there, and it'd still be fairly cool all summer long.
How would they make windows?
How would they make windows?
I think that, you know, back then they would just use almost like wax paper, something that was that you could kind of see through, or it was translucent. But a lot of times they just opened the windows. I remember there was one of the stories in the little house on the prairie that there was a lot of mosquitoes back then. And in the morning, Laura would wake up and her whole forehead would just be raised up because of the mosquitoes biting her forehead. And so at first they thought that they were trying to figure out what caused it, you know, and the malaria, which that's, I believe, how Mary had lost her sight, Laura's older sister. And they had, a lot of people had thought maybe it was eating watermelon, that caused it. But Pa Ingalls didn't believe that. But then they soon figured out that it was the mosquitoes that was carrying the malaria. So there was a lot of things they just had to kind of figure out on their own because they didn't have, you know, medical books or Google to look things up back then. So, but they spent a majority of their time just trying to survive, store up food for the winter so that they could live through the winter. So,
Yeah. These girls think watermelon is just a ridiculous idea to make that, right?
oh really?
They're with Pa. Yeah.
How do they get clean?
Say it one more time.
How do they get clean?
How do they take a bath?
Well, I think they only took a bath about once a week, you know, whether they needed it or not. So,
Yeah.
Well, they used to have a big tub, and they
wash
just
tubs.
wash tubs. They just put
And I've always
Water in it.
heard, I don't know if this is true, that the youngest in the family would get to take a bath first, and then they go all the way up the line to the dad, and the dad would have to take the bath last in the same water. They wouldn't switch it out. So if you were the baby of the family, that's good news. But if you weren't, ugh. Yeah.
My mom said that the littlest goes last.
Oh, the littlest goes last? I don't know. I think they'd use clean water on them. Maybe
Well,
she was.
You
no.
might have more of a preference because of where you are in your family.
Yes, yeah,
Being
that's
the
true.
youngest.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions, guys? What do we say?
Thank you.
This is so cool. I've never been in
Welcome.
here before, so this is awesome.